Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, and I'm reporting on another day in India. Not today, but yesterday. Today I'm actually sitting in the Mehrowli Archaeological Park, which is to the south of Delhi, and it's a wonderful place. And I'm sitting in a cafe, one of the very few I've found that actually serves proper coffee, and it's wonderfully pleasant, but I'll talk about that tomorrow. What I'm going to talk about is yesterday, which was my first day back in Delhi. Now, I've been to Delhi before. I went to Delhi 10 years ago on my first trip. There are videos on my channel about it, although they're less choreographed back in those days. And I'll be honest, I wasn't really that excited about coming back because I thought, well, I've seen everything I wanted to see. However, there was one thing that I hadn't seen before that I really wanted to see, and that's a person. And that's a gentleman called Gulab, who's a Sufi, and I arranged to meet him during my time in Delhi. So, got in very early in the morning, about 5 o'clock, Old Delhi railway station, absolute chaos. I'd slept quite well on the train, actually, so I was feeling okay, but bit disorientated. And then you have the usual hotel fiasco where they take you to places and they're full or they don't take foreigners, and the one thing that really annoyed me is the prices that they were charging were a lot more than I would normally pay in India. I've paid 3,000, which for me is astronomical for India. I guess one of the advantages of being in a better job than I used to be is I can actually afford that kind of thing occasionally, but it still annoys me. It's 30 quid by English standards. But I'm in this Hotel USA in Paharganj. Paharganj is basically where all the hotels are. It's the Femme Royale of India, I guess, of Delhi at least. So that's that. Bit crappy hotel, but you know what? I'm there, and I'd slept, some decent hours on the train, and I slept a few more. Woke up about 9, 10ish, something like that, and decided to have a little explore. So I had a look at places I hadn't been before, and one of the things I'd not explored was all about the Mahatma Gandhi. So I asked to go to the Gandhi Smritu, which is like death memorial thing, but there's two. There's one where he was actually killed, which is in New Delhi, and then there's one which is where he was not buried because he's Hindu, but where his cremation pyre was. And I went to the one where the cremation pyre was, and it was there's the National Gandhi Museum, which was a wonderful place, but it looked like it hadn't been touched since the 60s. It was in this very quiet building, not very well visited, and it was nice in that it was also dated. But then you think, well, if he's your national hero, surely you could spend a bit more money remembering him. But it was a nice museum, and I spent quite a bit of time in there looking at his life. Obviously, I know quite a bit about him. I've watched the film Gandhi, as a lot of people have, and I've read about him. I find him an utterly inspirational figure. Now, that's not to say he's not without his controversies, and I don't think his understanding of economics was all that good. But what I like about Gandhi is he had very pure intentions, and if you compare him with Narendra Modi, they are really two sides of a coin. I don't think Narendra Modi is a particular believer in Hinduism and Hindu philosophy. I probably didn't know a lot of it, but he likes to publicly pray and build temples. Gandhi wasn't that kind of guy. He actually lived the life, and he was in many ways a mystic. And one of his best mates was Rabindranath Tagore, who was also a mystic and a great poet, and I've written about him in the past. And another was a guy called Charles Freer Andrews, who was an Anglican clergyman, actually, but a very open-minded Anglican clergyman. Gandhi was into faith in action. But not just into faith where you get a load of middle-class people together drinking tea. It was actually, going out into the villages and that. And his name, Mahatma, which means great soul, was one given to him spontaneously by people in the villages. And it was through that sheer holiness that he managed to keep India together and to basically win independence. And he would go on fasts, but he would go on fasts, because of attacks on Muslims by Hindus, even though he wasn't a Hindu. That was the difference with him. Is like Modi's a politician. I don't think Gandhi was. He was a saint, and I guess we need both in some ways. But he wasn't tribal at all, and he would fight for other people outside of his own group, and I really admire that. And of course, who killed him in the end? One of his own. And I'm reminded very much of Yitzhak Rabin, who was another, he was actually a warrior to him, peacemaker, killed not by a Palestinian but by a Jew. Or, in the same area, the Egyptian chap, Said, was it? And I forget his name, and he was killed by a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. And isn't it always the same that the peacemakers, like Christ himself, get killed? So I went there, and then I crossed the road, and there was another Gandhi museum. And that was slightly more modern, and that was actually interesting as well. There were some interesting artifacts, like a boat that he crossed the river in during his famous salt march, and some of his artifacts. So I kind of went through the Gandhi story again, but I got stuff out of both museums. And then I went to the place of his cremation on the Rajghat, and I found that a moving spot. I actually did find it a moving spot. It was understated but fitting. It was nice. Yeah, it was nice. And again, I'm reminded when I went to Pakistan, the Jinnah Memorial. There were some things that were similar in that it was in a big park area and lots of people were out enjoying it, but the Gandhi one, like Jinnah was a politician, like Nehru, like Modi. But Gandhi was something else, and I think the death memorial reflects that. And it's nice, there was trees planted by lots of world leaders, so Bill Clinton's there in there, I noticed Bush was, and I didn't see anybody British. I'm sure they're there, I just didn't walk past them. But I did notice there was one by Nizanov, Turkmenbashi, the dictator of Turkmenistan, and then next to it was Nelson Mandela, and I thought, well, you couldn't get two more different people. Interestingly, Nelson Mandela always said he was inspired by Gandhi. So after that, I went to a place, and I think the name was Firoz Al-Shah, and it was like Delhi is this city that's been built and destroyed and built and destroyed so many times. And this was the remains of one of the earlier Muslim incarnations of Delhi. And it was a nice place, actually, around the back of the stadium. The tuk-tuk driver took me to the stadium at first, thinking I wanted to go there. I have actually probably seen enough cricket for now, but although you never know. But it was nice, and there was young couples walking around. I've noticed how very Muslim Delhi is after the areas I've been. A lot of girls in niqab, and it is the most noticeably Muslim city I've come across. I don't know what the percentages are. But that was, of course, one of the things that Gandhi fasted over almost before his death, about intercommunal rights within Delhi. So, and of course Delhi was the great Mughal city, so that kind of makes sense that there would be a big Muslim population here. And there was a ruined mosque, and a ruined palace there. Big pyramid structure, and on the top there was an Ashoka pillar, not with the lions. They'd gone, but there was. But the inscriptions, you couldn't get up close to it, unfortunately. And I don't think that was its original position. I think it'd been moved there to later date. So that was that, and then I took a tuk-tuk to the Jama Masjid, the Friday Mosque, which is the greatest mosque in Delhi. Built by Shah Jahan, was the greatest mosque in the subcontinent until Aurangzeb built it in Lahore, which I went to last year, and is bigger but actually quite similar. I had to fight through a massive bazaar to get there, but then when I got to the gates, I was there to meet this Gulab, this Sufi chap, and he wasn't there, so I sat on the steps for a while, did a bit of people watching, reading a bit of a lot of hassle from beggars though. And then Gulab came, and we hit it off really well. A really peaceful and gentle soul. And we walked around the masjid. He prayed, and I read a little bit of my Herman Hesse book. And then we went to a Sufi shrine that was right outside the gates. And I forget the name of the Sufi. I will write it in the text. But an interesting fellow. So apparently he was Jewish. He was an Armenian Jew, and he may have converted to Islam. He may not. If he did convert, it was probably just like conversion of convenience. Like he never really meant it, because he actually, I mean, he had a Hindu friend who he got to translate the Torah into Hindi, and he was actually almost a man above religions, and so he would be disdainful of all religions, but was very intensely spiritual. And what he used to say all the time was La ilaha, which, because the Shahada for Muslims is La ilaha illa Allah Muhammad Rasul Allah, says there is no God but God, and Muhammad's a prophet of God. But what he was saying is there is no God, and then he would stop it there. And of course this got him in trouble, because the emperor was Aurangzeb at the time, who was pretty much a damn bigoted fellow, I think you could say. And he hauled him up before him, and he said, you know, what do you believe? And he said, La ilaha. And he's like, and the rest? He said, I'm still contemplating the first bit. And it is said that Aurangzeb got his sword and sliced him down the middle, but then as he sliced him down the middle, his heart beating said La ilaha illa Allah, and then Aurangzeb realised he'd killed a holy man, felt really bad about it, so carried the body to where the grave is now and paid for the shrine. How much of this is true we don't know, but I think it's a wonderful story, and I found it quite an intense little place to pray. And I prayed there with Gulab, and then we met his wife, who's interesting because she's a Hindu, and he got into, like, it's been quite difficult, I think, not so much with his family but with her family, and she was exploring Islam. She may or may not have converted, I'm not sure, but he's encouraging her to look into the Hinduism more as well, and he's looked into Hinduism far more because of her, and vice versa, and I guess that's how interfaith should work. So we had a little chat, we had a meal together, and then Ramadan, the moon was sighted, so Ramadan started, so they wanted to go to the mosque. I'd already been, so what I went is to the Gurdwara Shishgant, which is actually the first place I went on my first trip to India 10 years ago, and I found it very powerful then, and it was my first subcontinent experience, but my first Sikh on the subcontinent experience, and it is a wonderful place. It's on Chowk, one of the main thoroughfares, actually been done up. It was a bit of a dump last time, the thoroughfare was, but it's been done up. It's all quite smart now. And I went and sat in there for about half an hour, listening to the raga music, letting it wash over me, trying to kind of comprehend everything that I've been to, because I feel now I'm in the period where I've done the exploring and I'm on a time of reflection, which happens towards the end of every trip, where you're trying to sum up and think about what have you learned, what questions are there, and that kind of stuff. And so I did that, and then went back to the hotel, and that's it. So that was yesterday. Tomorrow I think is my final day, but for now, Uncle Johnny man. Johnny.